To get you started in Module 1, I'd like to introduce you to the military metaphor. And by now, in looking over many of the various pieces of this course, you've, I'm sure, picked up on how much of the course is actually built on research in military planning and how military strategy is applied to understanding complex systems and dealing with complex environments. And initially, you may have wondered, well, I have no intention of being in the military, and why is it that I need to study strategy in order to understand complex systems and how to deal with them? That's what this particular video is about, is understanding how to apply the military metaphor. First, I do want you to think of it as only a metaphor. And in it being a metaphor, please don't think in terms of necessarily going to battle in any particular situation that you face. I don't want you to think of battle as what you're trying to do to solve any problem. It is not necessarily good to fight in all situations. But strategy is always valuable. It's always important. And it allows us to understand the wise allocation of resources. That's the reason why we're covering this. And so it is legitimate to think of any particular situation through a military metaphor where as we're reflecting on a particular situation, we think in terms of limited time, limited resources, facing opposition. It may not be a person, it may be a situation or a crisis that has to be dealt with. But it's still legitimate to apply this metaphor to a host of different disciplines. It's legitimate to apply it to the medical field. It's legitimate to apply it to business, right? Competition in business, and a number of other fields. But that's the way that I'd like you to think of applying it. Okay. In different professions, let's even say that you're negotiating, right? You're in a situation where you have to negotiate a sale, or you need to deal with somebody who is wanting to bargain with you, and you have to think, well, what's going to be most valuable in this particular situation? Strategy is still involved in understanding what is the best solution, what's going to be most decisive in this particular problem that you're dealing with. And for this class to work, you have to think that way. Now, some people may hear what I'm saying and think this sounds very Western, that what I am suggesting here, the way I'm suggesting approaching complexity, is a very Western mindset where the goal is focused on winning, and that's just so well. It plays into the stereotype of the white male suggesting that the goal is winning and using reason in order to win and all of this. Well, I suggest to you that this sort of caricature of the use of strategy is deeply flawed and foolish, and it comes from a lack of understanding of other cultures and history. If you look throughout history, strategy has been applied in the relationship between states for millennia, and some of the best books on strategy are actually from other countries, right? If we think about Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of Five Rings, there's plenty of evidence that throughout the history of the world, in many different cultures, people have thought through the principles of strategy. This is not a Western, logocentric, sort of imperialist mindset. Anywhere in the world where there is competition for resources, where there are complex problems that have to be solved, it is necessary to apply wisdom to the allocation of resources and timing and how to deal with opposing forces. This is just simply wisdom. The reason why you have people who make the case that no, we don't need this, we need to have a more open, more free, more multicultural approach to the allocation of resources. The reason why you have that sort of talk is because, and when people link this specifically to the relationship of different cultures in other countries, it is simply a view that is ignorant of history. When we look at the development of global history, we see that in different countries, people have competed for resources, have had to deal with complex problems. We see the same principles of operation that I will be covering in Module 3 in all of the great works of strategy that have been written throughout the history of the world. And I suggest to you also that when we consider the future, the global future that nations will be engaged in the 21st century, competing for natural resources, trying to solve complex environmental problems, dealing with environmental crises, it is necessary that we use the tried and true principles related to strategy and operation in order to deal with those problems. The people who do not think this way will find their legs just pulled out from underneath them. They'll wake up in a disadvantageous position and poor. And we're already seeing the beginning of that in international competition, people in other cultures and in other countries understand the necessity to think strategically in order to develop their economies, in order to compete in terms of capitalism and markets. This is just simply necessary. And there's been a push in the study of complexity to think of complexity in terms of things just simply emerging, that there are these realities that emerge and you can't really control them or predict them or affect them or have wisdom regarding them. They just sort of emerge. And as you read the article that I co-authored, it's part of the first module, I deal with this folly, the foolishness of approaching complex systems this way. While it is true that we need to understand emergence and understand how to deal with spontaneous developments, it still is the case that we need to think about how to deal with them strategically, that we have a plan for how we are going to, and we develop a way of thinking where we can act quickly and adaptively toward solving these problems or mitigating circumstances that could arise, and to not prepare oneself to do that, to not think strategically about these things is, and I've said it already, but it just is simply foolish. Do not allow the goodness, the wisdom of appreciating diversity to strip you of the wisdom that has been held throughout history in a number of diverse circumstances. If diversity is wisdom, it shouldn't destroy what diverse cultures have taught us. So now, having made that point, what I'd like to do is, in the next video that follows this one, to introduce you specifically to your textbook, Art of Design, and to show you how to apply, cut. Now that I have explained to you the purpose of the military metaphor in this class, what I would like you to do is to move on to the next video, which explains how to use the textbook Art of Design. And in that video, I will explain to you the history and context in which that book was written so that you'll be able to apply it in this class.